Hello, one and all. The Fever season is over. I want to talk about it. I'm Tony East. I've covered the team for the last 5 years. For the next, we've had a lot of videos breaking down the Fever playoffs on this channel during the postseason, and I want to do it one more time now that the series is over. The Fever lost Game 2 last night. You can see those press conferences right here on this channel as well, and a lot of you heard my Game 2 preview stuff I wanted to see from the Fever. They did lose, and in that way they came up short. But I think they did all of the things that most expected or hoped that they would do in terms of adjustments to prepare for this game. And I give credit to them for recognizing their deficiencies in that way, which also leads into a discussion about their offseason we'll get to when I'm done. But if you didn't listen to my pre-game lead-up videos, a couple things I wanted to see from the Fever. One, playing through Aaliyah Boston more. And Boston was awesome. 16 points, 19 boards, not as many assists as I thought could be possible, playing through her a little more, but with the way that Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell were getting trapped, thought the Fever did a good job moving the ball better in those moments. They had, particularly in the fourth quarter, when that game got tight, a huge play. For example, when it was 70-68, two players come out to defend Caitlin Clark. She whips it to Boston really quick, who does a high-low pass to Temi Fagbenle, and she draws a foul. Huge free throws late in the game, right? That's the kind of stuff that wasn't happening in Game 1 that needed to happen in Game 2. The Fever realized it. Aaliyah Boston realized it. They got to it. The first basket of the game, a Caitlin Clark three, a good sign for the Fever that she was getting them up and feeling it early. It didn't last, but it was important. Their second made shot of the game was Kelsey Mitchell running behind the defense, right? They didn't see that as much in that first game. Just exactly what they wanted to see. Like, they stylistically were playing correctly in that way. Other stuff I said I thought was important after Game 1. Get Lexi Hall more three-point attempts. She didn't make as many as she would have liked or the Fever would have liked, but they got her 5, right? They were looking for her from deep. That all was exactly what I thought they needed to do. The Fever realized their deficiencies from Game 1 really fast. So how you react to that information, and I can talk more about the game in a second, kind of says a lot about what you think of the Fever. On one hand, you could say, this is good, this is good. This is the first example of this young team in the postseason, the first chance to see what they would do adjusting on the playoff stage against a really good defense. And I thought, top down, coaching down, in terms of how they played specifically, there's some stuff I'll quibble with, but in terms of how they played specifically, how they addressed their shortcomings of Game 1, the coaching and players both responded correctly, right? There was a lot of stuff throughout the game that suggested that they were doing that. On the other hand, you could say they were not prepared enough, coaching and players, for the first game where they couldn't play their style, they could not get stops, shots didn't fall, but that wasn't why they lost. They did everything woeful in that first game. And so there's a little bit of both involved here, but I thought, in terms of what I hoped the Fever would do and how they would try to manage this, that they did good in those adjustments. The other thing I talked about in the second episode of my Game 2 preview was changing the starting lineup, and they did that. Temi Fagbenle started instead of Nalissa Smith. We will talk about Nalissa Smith in this game thing, and then as we transition to the offseason. But I thought that they should do that because they were already playing Temi more, and clearly they think she fits in their speedier style, the way they're trying to be disruptive and fast on both ends, better than Smith does, especially in this series. They played Temi Fagbenle 35 minutes. She was pretty solid. 9 points, 9 boards, 3 assists. Hit a clutch three that could have been one of the most important shots of the season had the Fever held on to win this game. I thought that was a smart adjustment, but I thought that adjustment would come in tandem with more minutes for Nalissa Smith, and that second part did not happen. In fact, none of the Fever bench played very much in this game, which was a little perplexing to me. Every starter played 30-plus minutes for the Fever. Lexi Hall had foul trouble, 5 fouls, and only played, air quotes, 31 minutes. Aaliyah Boston at 32. Some of that was Damiris Dantas minutes, who played pretty well. Some of that was 4 minutes for Nalissa Smith. I thought that number should have been closer to 10 in some way. I don't know how they would have done it with the way the rest of their front court was playing, but that would have made sense to me. She does offer some sort of difference in style that does matter against a team that's as tough and slow-paced and bruising, for lack of better terms, as the Sun. That's something I would have liked to see different. There was one lineup out there that featured Erica Wheeler, Caitlin Clark, and Kelsey Mitchell. That was a little perplexing to me. The front court of that group was Nalissa Smith and Damiris Dantas. That lineup had barely ever played together before, right? That was pretty surprising to me in this game. I think that some of that was foul trouble and some of that was solving rotation stuff for Christy Sides with a new starting five, and that was I think, a mistake of a group. But in general, they've had success throughout the season with, they in 39 of the 40 regular season games, they played the Wheeler, Mitchell, Clark trio together at some point. It's not surprising to me that they went to that. But with that front court combo, it was pretty fresh, and it did not go particularly well, which is one consequence of changing the starting five, is figuring out the rotations behind that, and then that stacks with foul trouble for Lexi Hall to create a bit of a challenge there. No minutes for Katie Lou Samuelson, which she didn't play awesome in game one in her 5 minutes, but it wasn't so awful. I thought maybe she would play again, get this rotation going a little more. But this series, look, the Fever played how they should have in this game. The Sun were just better than them. And I don't think that is some insulting thing to say about the Fever, who were 500 this season. They won 20 games. The Sun were better than them. The Sun were the 3 seed. Yes, the Fever beat the Sun once. They were hot from 3 that night. That never happened this series. And the Fever offense was really hot from 3 after the Olympic break all season. I think people were a little too high on the Fever supply heading into the postseason. They're still clearly a tier behind these best teams. And yet, at their best, they were in it. They had chances to win this game. They were ahead in the final minutes. And I think that says a lot about their progress, too, is that they gave themselves a chance. This game was tied at 75 with 2 minutes left, right? The Fever truly had a shot to win it. I don't think that should be lost in the fact that some stuff didn't go their way or they won't be happy with some stuff. I think they'll be talking about turnovers on the drive home or the flight home or whatever. 13-7. That was the key change to me because the Fever shot a better percentage from the field, shot a better percentage from deep, and won the rebounding battle handily. Won the rebounding battle. But they gave the ball away too much, and that allowed the Sun to, with their free throw advantage they already had, a lot of people complaining about the refs in this game, take about as many shots as the Fever. Those turnovers were absolutely killer. So I think the Fever adjusted correctly, but their execution wasn't where it needed to be with some fouling issues, with some turnover issues, with some, not a lot, but some shot selection issues. They defended much better and much more disciplined. They truly played in a way that gave themselves a chance to win. And that's what a young team needs to show in the playoffs. Now they have that experience. Now they know what that level looks like. Now they know what the best teams look like. And that will matter going into next season. Unfortunately, it's over. They don't have more chances to work on these things and practice. I said before the series, I thought the Sun were the toughest matchup in the league for the Fever in the postseason, and they got it. Connecticut's defense is unbelievable. They have lots of bodies to throw at the Caitlin Clark-Kelsey Mitchell duo, and that was even with Ty Harris. Without her, I thought, maybe this will become an advantage for a Fever. But Marina Mabry played good defense. Veronica Burton had a nice series, and that sliver of an advantage that I made up in my head sort of went away. So even though the Fever did well against Bree Jones, they actually were much better against Bonner in Game 2. It wasn't enough for them to get over the hump. So what stands out from this series that matters now? The Fever go into the offseason. Well, let's just use Game 2 as my perfect example. For those of you who watched it, you'll know. If you didn't watch it, let me explain to you. There were moments in the fourth quarter. It was abundantly obvious to anyone watching. The Fever were gassed, exhausted. And they played 40 minutes of Kelsey Mitchell and 40 minutes of Caitlin Clark, which is fine. For their style to work, they need to do that. It's a do-or-die game. You play your stars as much as they can handle. They defended well enough that I don't think that was a mistake. I wonder if 38, 37 minutes would have given them more down-the-stretch energy, given them a chance, but they might not have been in it late had they done that. So I can't fault that. They were tied with 2 minutes to go. Again, either way, they looked gassed at that point in the game. And I point to that to say, the Fever bench, they played 8 players. Physically, 8 players played. Christy Sides trusted her top 8. The 3 bench players were Damiris Dantas for 9 minutes, Nalissa Smith for 4 minutes, and Erica Wheeler for 9 minutes. That's a total of 22 bench minutes. Stephanie White and the Sun trusted 7 players in this game. Their starting 5, which was Mabry in for Ty Harris, as well as Nelson Ododa, O-N-O, as I'll call her for the rest of this, and Veronica Burton. Those 7 players are the only ones who played for the Sun. Both bench players for Connecticut played 24 minutes. They each individually played more minutes than the whole Fever second unit did, and they were both very good. O&O had a great series. Burton had a really good series as well. Credit to them. So I bring all this up to say the Fever's depth was a little exposed in this series. They did not have enough depth to trust to play, and that required them to lean on their stars a little more. They need a little more punch off the bench. They tried to address that. They added veterans this summer. They obviously drafted Caitlin, right? That's more talent in from last year, but when it came down to it in this series, that was not an advantage for them at all. And some of that is just going to be adding talent, and some of that's going to be finding different lineups or different combinations that make sense because And I would have liked to see or hoped that at some point a stint or two for either Katie Lou Samuelson or Christy Wallace could have helped the Fever. Wings are so valuable. Wings who can shoot are valuable. But neither of those two really produced at the level they would have needed in the season to prove they belonged in this setting. So I understand kind of both sides of it, where Christy sides, the head coach has to decide, well, this player hasn't maybe produced the way we wanted this year, but we need their skills right now. But that exposes that the Fever, in their offseason quest, need depth, particularly probably in those 2 through 3 positions. Some size guards off the bench, right? So they're not relying on either Erica Wheeler or like front court-esque wings, even though they are wings specifically. That was one thing. The other thing that really stood out is their front court rotation. I mentioned I would talk about Nalissa Smith again. 9 minutes for Damaris Dantas. She did well. She made important shots. Temi Fagbenle obviously fits very well with her speed. Aaliyah Boston had 16 and 19 and was terrific. +2, they won her 32 minutes. Right? Those three clearly did well. Smith did not play well. Look, Nalissa Smith is, to me, a center. She's very talented. I covered the first 2 years of her career even before this. It's just really hard for her to play the way that she is at her best with the way the Fever are structured now. And even more so with how much the tempo of the Fever sped up throughout the season, whereas Nalissa Smith in like more slowed down offenses where she can set some screens over a long possession, force switches, be a bruiser, be a rebounder. She's better in that kind of system. I'm not saying that she's not good. I'm saying her fit with the Fever may not be perfect, which is why I suggested maybe she come off the bench. And so as the Fever look into the offseason, I wonder if what Nalissa Smith's future is. Her contract is protected for next season, but trades are always possible. There's an expansion team now too. And I wonder how the Fever can get depth. And if Nalissa Smith is back, that's fine. She's good. They'll have to figure out some changes to make her as good as possible and to make the lineups with her on the floor even stronger. But she's talented, right? It's not the end of the world if she's gone. She even shared it on a social media post today. She knows she's good, and she's right. She is. It's just got to be about fit. And I do think that stinks that it didn't ever click in that way, and her role kind of was dynamic throughout the season. So I'm just curious about her future and how the Fever add to that depth. They have a first-round pick. They'll have money to spend as Erica Wheeler becomes a free agent, as Victoria Vivian's buyout money leaves their books. Kelsey Mitchell's a free agent. Those will be the biggest storylines to me of this offseason and how the Fever move forward with what they have. Some of you might say their head coach will be a story of the offseason. I'm not sure. I think Christy Sides deserves another season as the head coach of the Fever, at least one, maybe more. A lot of people don't agree with me on that. I'm not going to sit here and debate that, but that's what their offseason is now, is figuring out all of those things because they know what the Caitlin Clark era looks like. They're going to score. They're going to have speed and tempo. They're going to be the best transition team in the league. They've got to find a way to get stops. They've got to find a way to have the team be ready to run and play like that for 35 to 40 minutes a night. And they can't have just a dreadful game one of a series where they're forced to adjust so much and be on the back foot. Credit to the Sun. The Connecticut played very well. They had not swept the first round in a couple of years. And I don't mean to say any of this stuff I've said today to take away from anything they did. They were awesome. I said before the series I thought they were the toughest matchup in the league for the Fever. That proved to be true. Credit to them. Stephanie White is a hell of a coach. And now it's offseason time for the Fever. If you're watching this today, it comes out. Fever Exit Interviews tomorrow morning. You'll hear from all their players. Again, then I'll share as many of those videos as I can right here on this channel. So good time to subscribe and get all that as their offseason starts. And then I'll probably share some analysis videos as we head into October and then learn more about the Fever offseason, free agency, the expansion draft, things of that sort. So thank you guys for listening to this and rocking with my playoff coverage. I've liked doing these videos, so I'll probably do more Fever ones. Talk to you guys very soon.